Welcome to the Career Transition Workshop. In the first chapter in the Gospel of John, he records how two disciples of John the Baptist run after Jesus, who they have just heard speak. He turns and asks them such a simple but profoundly relevant question. What do you seek? Whether you are trying to find a new job or make a new life, it is a question that calls for an answer. The first and foremost factor in finding your future is to find your focus. A focus leads to targets, and targets lead to proactivity. Without a focus, you lack targets and default to a reactive search, which is far less effective. The failure to find your focus limits your options and the tools you can use. We're finishing up a two-part mini-series with a session entitled Career Choices and Consequences, How to Find Your Future Focus. One of the mistakes a job seeker makes is failure to be properly pointed, to have a single-mindedness in their campaign rather than randomly roaming the range. We have divided this session into three parts. Part one is about making choices, where the outcome is to recognize that you have career and life choices that you can make today, that you can take ownership of today, that will change your career and life from this point forward. Part two is about decision models, where the outcome is to help you be equipped with tools to break down the big decisions into more concrete choices. And finally, in part three, we're going to talk a little bit about seeking God's will, to help you see that life goes easier when you ask God to help you make your choices, not simply bless the ones that you've made without Him. So let's begin with part one, making choices, where we're talk about charting. That charting is choosing, determining your destination. Last time we dealt with the severance passage, the passage of promise. This time we will look at the charting passage, the passage of projections, where the choices you make help you to pick your path to prosperity. Our watchword here is focus. Focus. Let me illustrate with a story about a driver and a destination. The driver in this case is the career cabbie. You know, there you are out there in the wilderness looking for a job, and you need some help to get you to your final destination. So what do? You hail a cab. Not just any cab, but a career cab. Hey, a transition taxi. In reality, the driver of that cab represents anyone in your network just simply there trying to help you. You get into the cab, and the career cabbie asks a simple question. It's about your destination. He wants to know where you're going. Where do you want to end up? That simple question deserves an answer, and here are some of the ones that we hear every day. One of them would be the uninvolved answer. It goes something like this. I really don't care. Anywhere will do. It takes such an effort to pick a place, so I'll just let you pick a place for me. Can you imagine the cabbie? Ain't going nowhere with that. Or how about the unclear answer? The unclear answer goes something like this. I don't know. I guess I could just do about anything. I just a little unclear as to where to go next. I find myself in a fog. That's the unclear answer. Again, ain't going to put the cab in gear on that. Aren't going to move out with that. Maybe it's the undecided answer. It goes like this. I'd like to go either to Fort Lauderdale or Fort Worth. Either would be good. I'm at this fork in the road, and I really can't decide which way to go. In your Seeker's Notebook, there's a great exhibit to read. It's a Dr. Seuss. It's entitled The Guy Who Couldn't Make Up His Mind. Read it if you are tempted to give the undecided answer. Well, then there's always the unfocused answer. Here's what that sounds like. When the cabbie says, "Hey, where do you want to go?" You respond, "I'd like to go out west." Out west? It's kind of vague, isn't it? It's kind of unfocused, isn't it? I mean, and you may think, well, nobody gives an answer like that, but we hear it all the time. Ask a job seeker what kind of job you are seeking. Sales. Out west. It's the same notion. Here the cabbie starts the engine, revs the motor, ready to put the car into gear, asks the question, and gets one of these answers. What can he do? He just shuts down. No help until you help yourself. Your networkers are just like that. What they're seeking is a focused answer, and it sounds like this. I need to get to the Riata restaurant on Houston Street in the Sundance Square in Fort Worth. Since you know where you want to go, since you know what you seek, the cabbie can help you get there. He'll start out right away. So think, what are the benefits of a focused search? Well, there are many. Here are just a few. You avoid rabbit herding or water bugging, where you waste so much energy running around in random directions. You can dedicate 100% of your resources to a single campaign, which creates a larger critical mass, which is required to knock down closed doors. Third would be, like good advertising, you repeatedly promote one simple, single message over and over again. Another benefit is you gain synergy in your research and networking. Next, you can use not only reactive techniques, but proactive techniques in your search. And last but not least, it empowers your network to clearly see what targets you are after. These are the benefits of having a focused search. Bottom line, job searching is much more like spear fishing than net fishing, more like using a rifle than a shotgun. You want to focus on the target, squeeze the trigger, and hit it dead center. Well, let's talk a little bit about choices. That our choices create consequences, which in turn create chances for us to make more choices, and the cycle continues again and again. To decide on a focused job search, you will have to make some choices. You can make either choices proactively or passively. Proactive choices tend to be binary in nature, like hot or cold or deist or atheist. They're choices, one thing or another thing. Passive choices tend to kind of get lost somewhere in between, like lukewarm or like an agnostic. And not making a choice is really a passive choice. Don't be passive. Don't be lukewarm, caught in the middle. In the book of Revelations, Jesus Christ is quoted as saying, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. So because you are lukewarm, I will spit you out of my mouth. Wow, that's an illustration. Don't get caught in the middle. Like, I remember hearing about this dyslexic, agnostic insomniac who stayed up all night debating the very existence of dog. You'll get that in a minute. Don't get caught in the middle. Make proactive choices, not passive choices. While you get to make the choice, you have to take the consequence. To help you make the right choices, evaluate these possible consequences beforehand. First, your choices will create both positive and negative consequences, both gains and losses. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "For everything you have missed, you've gained something else, and for everything you gain, you lose something." Your choices not only will have positive and negative consequences, but your choices will create both direct and indirect consequences that impact ourselves directly and impact others indirectly. They'll have collateral effects. Moses writes in the book of Deuteronomy, "See, I have set before you today life and prosperity, and death and adversity. So choose life, in order that you may live, you and your descendants." The choice would not only impact you, but also your descendants. Not only the individual, but the innocents. Third, your choices will create both immediate and everlasting consequences, both short-term and long-range impacts. Remember the axiom that goes something like no pain, no gain? Let me boil that down a little bit. That short-term gain yields long-range pain. Short-term gain yields long-range pain. It's gratification. Any instant gratification tends to have a negative repercussion over a period of time. I may be gratified to eat every piece of chocolate I can get my hands on, but over time, that has a problem, a pain that goes with it. It's sort of like sin. Short-term gain yields long-term pain. There are repercussions for poor choices that we make to merely satisfy ourselves. But likewise, short-term pain yields long-term gain. You could think of that as sacrifice or investment. I will sacrifice something in the short term to achieve some return on my investment in the long term. Short-term pain yields long-term gain. It's a lot like love. What are then the career choices that would illustrate this point of short-term and long-term trade-offs? Well, how about short-term gain yields long-term pain? An example would be like taking the big buck job with a lot of travel and long hours and choosing to give up family or only giving them limited quality time, which is like giving somebody in a fine restaurant a single cube of steak. But an example of short-term pain to yield long-term gain might be doing something like going back to school to re-engineer your skills to be better positioned for the future market. Or another example of short-term pain to yield long-term gain might be to not reach so far out to get the brass ring that you might fail because you haven't been properly seasoned along the way. So here's what I suggest you do with the choices you face, is think about it as a three-dimensional cube. You know, on one face and the other is the positive and negative consequences. On another are the direct and indirect consequences. And on the third, there is the immediate and everlasting consequences of each choice. And each choice you're considering, whether to go into business for yourself, whether to go find a job, whether to take this job or that job, go with this industry or that industry. Those are choices that you can make. You can make them proactively. Then measure each of the consequences associated with each of those choices. Do that objectively, and you'll come out with a better answer. Don't just go with what your feelings are. God created your head about 18 inches over your heart, so your mind would rule your emotions. So use these tools to help make the choices. Let's move on to part 2, decision models. We're going to give you several decision models to help take that big decision of what to do next and boil it down to smaller choices that you can make proactively. And the first model we're going to begin with is something we call the 4 squared model. You must make a choice as to which square you will seek. You must choose either to take the entrepreneurial track or an employment track. Choose to either work for yourself or work for others. Second, you must choose to either continue the career you have been doing or change careers. So with these 4 quadrants, let's take a look at each one. Let's start with looking at the new job. Let's begin by looking at a choice that most people make, and that is, I'll just go out and find a new job. I was looking for a job when I got the last one. Now I'll go out and find a new one. You know, though, what is interesting about this choice is that although 60% make the choice to be an employee who works for others in the same career, 80% of those people employed say they really don't like what they're doing. How do you reconcile that? Why do people choose what they don't like to do? Well, one answer could be it's kind of a comfort zone. At least you know it well. It doesn't cause you any discomfort to move out of your comfort zone. It just causes you the discomfort that you already know inside your comfort zone. Also, we know that often the shortest path to reemployment is to go back to doing what you've been doing, as opposed to take on a different direction. In essence, the reason is it's the least risky option. Although it may not be the most satisfying option, it's the least risky option. Remember what we said in session 1, that track record sells? Well, this is sticking with your track record. So the risks and rewards influence your decision making. Every choice besides a new job creates a greater risk and may create even better rewards. So let's take a look at another quadrant, the new career quadrant. The choice is not just changing jobs, but now changing careers, moving to a new profession or a new industry or both. About 20% make this choice their choice. Well, here are some things you need to know. Sometimes making this choice is easier to accomplish when you have a job than when you're out of work. It's much more difficult to do when you don't have a job. Let me help you understand this choice. You are asking the hiring authority to overlook qualified, experienced candidates and, in essence, underwrite the investment as you learn the new career on their watch. Remember, that's not easy for a hiring authority to do. Hiring authorities usually make the least cost, least risk, least controversial hiring decisions. You're asking them to buck what's normal. That's hard. The next quadrant is new business. The choice to work for yourself doing what you've done for others. Here, about 15% make this choice. Well, I'm going to tell you something now about doing your new business, starting a new business, buying a new business, doing a new business. Here's the tip. Write this down. If you don't walk away with anything else, this is what you need to remember, and it's how to make a small fortune in a business of your own. Are you ready? Got it? How to make a small fortune in a business of your own. Here's the answer. Start with a very large fortune and slowly but surely whittle it all away. That's how you come out with a small fortune. You know, sometimes owning your own business is really overrated. I think the only thing more overrated than natural childbirth is the joy of really owning your own business. But then there's the last quadrant here, and that's the new dream. Here, the choice is to work for yourself, doing what you've never done before, but only dreamed of doing. Only about 5% make this their choice. It is the corner that we refer to as the kamikaze corner. Now, dreams can come true with the proper amount of devotion, dedication, and divine direction. Solomon writes in his later years in the book of Ecclesiastes, he looks back over his life and writes these words, "For the dream comes through much effort." Amanda Bradley writes this poem about dreams. She says, "Follow your dreams, take one step at a time. Don't settle for less, just continue to climb. Follow your dream. If you stumble, don't stop and lose sight of your goal. Press on to the top. For only on top can we see the whole view. Can we see what we've done and what we can do? Can we then have the vision to seek something new? Press on and follow your dream." I'm a dreamer. I wrote this poem. It goes like this: "The fact that dreams don't always come true doesn't stop the dreamer from dreaming anew." So, which quadrant is your quadrant? Is it a new job? Is it a new career? Is it a new business? Is it a new dream? You need to make the choice. Well, let's talk about the choice of owning your own business and being the boss. There are many reasons why looking for a business to own may be a better option than looking for a job. Sometimes it's easier to own a business and appoint yourself king than to try to convince other people that you should be king. It depends upon your age and stage of life. You can burn a bunch of bucks on an extended job search merely to gain employment that you may lose again in 2 to 4 years. The only problem is then you're going to be 2 to 4 years older, re-entering the job market once again. Based upon what you've learned in session 1 about length of search, anyone looking at a 9 to 18-month job search really should consider the entrepreneurial track, but only if they have these 2 ingredients. They have enough financial resources for themselves and others, and they have sound business acumen. Let's take a look at the 2 choices of owning a business, to build or to buy. That is the question. The build option is turning an idea into a business literally from scratch. It is the riskiest, has the highest failure rate. About 80% don't make it to the 3rd year for various reasons, but mostly because they're undercapitalized. If you don't have a burning idea, that's okay. Then you can take someone else's great idea and make it happen, or build on somebody else's existing ideas and make it happen. When you borrow somebody else's idea, it's as if somebody says, "You know, John, you know what you should do? You should do such and such." Well, it was their idea, but you could do it. And when you build on someone's existing idea, it's as if there is a person that you may know and they're working at full capacity, kind of in their 1-story, 1-room business. And you come along and you go, you know, from where you are, I can add capacity. I could build another floor. I could expand to another room. I can do more with you. We can do more together than you're able to do on your own. It's their idea to start with, but you're extending their idea because you're bringing greater capacity. But all of that boils down to taking an idea and building a business from scratch. High risk. There's also the buy option, which means you are acquiring an existing profitable business, one that's had positive cash flow, one which has expansion potential, and you're buying it from the current owners who want to sell it for various reasons. It tends to be the least risky, much lower failure rate. Generally, the $1 to $5 million businesses are bought from retiring owners who offer great opportunities, but you will probably pay a little bit more of a premium for a well-run business. But think about it, you're not really going to be paying, are you? It's the profits from the business over time that will be paying back for the sales price of getting a premium business. You must get comfortable, really, about sometimes the lack of glamour associated with a $1 to $5 million business. They're not all that exciting. I sometimes point to a person's shoelaces and let them notice that there's a little plastic thing on the end of it. It actually has a name. But somebody manufactures shoelaces and somebody manufactures a machine to put that little plastic thing on those shoelaces, and somebody manufactures another machine to coil those shoelaces up, bind them in packaging, and then be ready to ship them to shoe stores. It's not a very glamorous business, but who knows what the profitability of that business actually is. Could be a great buy. So to help you get comfortable with the lack of glamour associated with most of these businesses, I'm going to suggest you read Thomas Stanley's A Millionaire Next Door. He's talking about everyday millionaires whose net worth is tied up in their small business, their micro business that they've owned, managed, nurtured, expanded over the years. With the baby boom generation getting ready to retire, there are many people ready to sell their businesses and let somebody else lead them into the future. Those are great buys. There is an in-between option between building and buying. The in-between option is buying a startup. What does that mean? It's franchising. Franchising is using what the franchisor has done before somewhere else. It actually ends up being the second riskiest option. It has lower failure rates than the 80% startups from scratch. Their failure rate tends to be in the 25 to 50% level. That means 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 2, kind of a flip of the coin, don't make it to their third year, again, for various reasons. 90% of franchises on the market today, I believe, are too risky. Consequently, you need a reputable broker to find what works for you and is a qualified franchise for you to pursue. It is still a startup. Just because it was successful down the street, just because it was successful someplace else, doesn't mean that you are not starting up at your location in your market area. So it still has all the risk of a startup. It's just a startup with a running start. Franchises can be successful in a single location, but usually require that you own multiple locations to get to a 6-digit personal income. I'm not putting down owning your own business. A lot of people own their own business. I own my own business. And there have been a lot of people who have started businesses and become quite successful. Consider owning your own business. Then sit down and take a team picture like these folks did years ago, back in 1978. That's the initial team for Microsoft. And right there, that's a young Bill Gates, who now can buy the entire state of Montana with petty cash.